Lineage in the Torah was not determined by phenotype, autosomal admixture, or the maternal line. In the Torah, lineage for all nations, tribes, and clans was determined by the paternal line. Adam was created from the dust of the earth by our Elohim, and even his wife, who is the mother of us all, was created from Adam's body. Satan and his allies seek to undermine, distort, and destroy the natural order that Yahuwah has established from the beginning. All African Americans are mixed with European ancestry through our autosomal DNA, but some of us also have European ancestry through our direct paternal line, maternal line, or both. The average African American carries around 24% European DNA in their autosomes. 30 to 40% of African American men have a European y-chromosome. Even if you don't descend paternally from a European male ancestral line, you have family members somewhere in your line that do. For they are not all Yasharal who are among Yasharal. Romans chapter 9, verses 1 through 13. I speak the truth in Messiah, I do not lie, my conscience also bearing me witness in the set-apart Spirit, that I have great sadness and continual grief in my heart, for I myself could have wished to be banished from Messiah for the sake of my brothers, my relatives according to the flesh, who are the children of Yasharal, to whom is the adoption, and the esteem, and the covenants, and the giving of the Torah, and the worship, and the promises, who are the fathers, and from whom is the Messiah according to the flesh, who is over all. Elohim blessed forever. Amen. However, it is not as though the word of Elohim has failed, for they are not all Yasharal who are of Yasharal. Neither are they all children because they are the seed of Abraham, but in Yitzhak your seed shall be called. That is, those who are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of Elohim, but the children of the promise are reckoned as the seed. For this is the word of promise. At this time I shall come, and Sarah shall have a son. And not only so, but Rebekah having conceived by one, our father Yitzhak, yet before they were born or had done any good or evil, in order that the purpose of Elohim according to choice might stand, not of works but of him who calls, it was said to her, the greater shall serve the lesser, as it has been written, Jacob I have loved, but Esau I have hated. The word translated as of in the phrase, for they are not all Yasharal who are of Yasharal, is the word ek in the Greek Septuagint. This word ek can be translated as the English words of or among. Translating ek to the word of makes the meaning of the phrase less tangible and more esoteric. The word of leads the reader to think that the author is speaking about the inner spirit of bloodline Yasharal, making it difficult to precisely identify who is and who isn't true Yasharal according to the Spirit when using flawed human judgment. Think of replacement doctrine, where Gentiles claim to be true spiritual Israel, replacing the bloodline Yasharal, and that they, being Gentiles, are free from following and obeying the commandments of Yahuwah. However, if we translate ek to among, then it is clear that the phrase is making a distinction between bloodline Yasharal and the foreigners living among them. For example, when Yasharal left Mitzrayim, there was a multitude of people from various nations who also left Mitzrayim with them. It also puts the phrase in harmony with the rest of the sentence, which separates the physical bloodline, that is to say, the children of promise, from the other sons and daughters of Abraham through Hagar and Keturah. The final separation occurring at Esau and Jacob. Y-chromosome. Leviticus chapter 24, verses 10 to 14. And the son of a Yasharalite woman, whose father was a Mitzrayim man, went out among the children of Yasharal. And the Yasharalite woman's son and a man of Yasharal strove in the camp. And the Yasharalite woman's son blasphemed the name and cursed. So they brought him to Moshe. Now his mother's name was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan. And they put him under guard, that it might be declared to them at the mouth of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Bring the one who has cursed outside the camp, and all those who heard him shall lay their hands on his head, and all of the congregation shall stone him. Now, if Shelomith's son was considered to be a Yasharalite man, why is a distinction made between him and the children of Yasharal, whom he went out among? Why is the author of the passage informing us that his father was a Mitzrayim man? Why is a further distinction made between him and the man of Yasharal, whom he fought against? Why not say that two Yasharalite men fought if he's considered to be a Yasharalite through his mother's lineage? Ma'asai, Acts chapter 16, verses 1 to 3. And he came to Derbe and Lystra, and see, a certain taught one was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain Yehudi woman who believed, but his father was Greek, who was well spoken of by the brothers who were at Lystra and Iconium. Shaul wished to have this one go with him, and he took him and circumcised him because of the Yahudim who were in those places, for they all knew that his father was Greek. Shemoth, Exodus, chapter 12, verses 43 to 49. And Yahuwah said to Moshe and Aaron, This is the law of the Pesha. No son of a stranger is to eat of it, but any servant a man has bought for silver, when you have him circumcised, then let him eat of it. A sojourner and a hired servant does not eat of it. It is eaten in one house. You are not to take any of the flesh outside the house, nor are you to break any bone of it. All the congregation of Yasharal are to perform it. And when a stranger sojourns with you and shall perform the Pesha to Yahuwah, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and perform it, and he shall be as a native of the land. But let no uncircumcised eat of it. There is one Torah for the native born and for the stranger who sojourns among you. It is obvious by this passage in Shemoth that Timotheus was not living as a Yasharalite man. Otherwise, he would have been circumcised on the 8th day as a child, and he would have also been keeping all of the festivals. This concept of inheriting your Jewishness through your mother's line is of pagan origin and is not found in the Torah. A brief science lesson on genetics. Blaine Bettinger, The Family Tree Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy. Bettinger, page 53. Autosomal DNA refers to the 22 pairs of non-sex chromosomes found within the nucleus of every cell. The autosomal DNA chromosomes, or autosomes, vary in length, and when they are visualized, they are numbered approximately in relation to their sizes, with autosome 1 being the largest and autosome 22 being the smallest. Autosomal DNA, unlike mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, and y-chromosomal DNA, y-DNA, is inherited equally from both parents, and accordingly, an individual gets one chromosome in each chromosome pair from mom and one chromosome in each chromosome pair from dad. Unfortunately, since the chromosomes are not labeled or marked in a way that easily identifies which parent they come from, the results of a single autosomal DNA genetic genealogy test alone cannot identify the specific source of a piece of DNA. Bettinger, pages 53 to 54. A child inherits his entire DNA from his parents, about 50% of his DNA from his mother and about 50% from his father. However, the child is not inheriting all of his parents' DNA. Instead, he's only inheriting half of his parents' total DNA and leaving half of it behind. This occurs at every generation, meaning that as we go back in time, we inherit less DNA from our ancestors at each generation. Autosomal DNA inheritance. As you go back in time, the number of ancestors you have expands, and a smaller percentage of DNA is inherited from each ancestor for every generation. This is the reason why you will not have the same autosomal makeup as your ancient ancestors. It is the male's sperm which determines the sex of the child. The male sperm contains either a Y or X chromosome, while the female egg contains only an X chromosome. A male sperm containing a Y chromosome that fertilizes a female egg containing an X chromosome will result in a male child with XY chromosomes. A male sperm containing an X chromosome that fertilizes a female egg containing an X chromosome will result in a female child with XX chromosomes. A biological male is not a woman, and a biological female is not a man. Reality must take precedence over public relations, for nature cannot be fooled. Richard Feynman. Patterns of DNA inheritance. Males inherit an X chromosome from their mother and a Y chromosome from their father, and mitochondrial DNA from their mother. But as you'll see, that's not always true for the mitochondrial DNA part. Females inherit an X chromosome from their mother, an X chromosome from their father, and mitochondrial DNA from their mother. But once again, that mitochondrial part is not always true, as you'll see in a moment.
In many cultures, surnames are passed from father to child. I am a MacLysett because my father, my father's father, and my father's grandfather were MacLysetts. Unfortunately, my many female ancestors don't get recorded, and in fact, I don't even know my great-grandmother's maiden names.
But there does exist a very important genetic link between the women in my family, and that's found not on the 23 pairs of chromosomes that lie within the cell nucleus. Instead, it's found in another part of the cell called the mitochondria. So here it is, this is a mitochondria, and this is a component of cells of eukaryotes. That's everything except bacteria. They're sometimes known as the powerhouse of the cell, and that's because they produce all the chemical energy, known as ATP, that's required for metabolism. But they do other things as well. They're involved in signaling and in cell growth and cell death. But one really fascinating thing about mitochondria is that they've got their own little circular genome that's completely separate from the other chromosomes in the cell. It's really very short. It's about 15,000 times shorter than chromosome 1, and it only contains 37 genes, 13 of which are involved in the energy functions. And in any one given cell, there are many mitochondria, ranging from hundreds to hundreds of thousands.
Everybody knows that the DNA you inherit from each biological parent is an even split. I mean, hopefully everybody knows. You get half from the egg and half from the sperm, and that combines to make you. Well, almost. 37 genes are found in your mitochondria, those little energy factories of cells. And that mitochondrial DNA only comes from the egg. At least, that's what we thought. Earlier this week, an international team of researchers announced that they'd found strong evidence that mitochondrial DNA can be inherited from both parents, which could change what we know about not only disease inheritance, but like human history as a whole. It all started with a 4-year-old boy that doctors suspected of having a mitochondrial disorder, a disease caused by mutations in mitochondrial DNA. They're trickier to diagnose and treat than other genetic diseases, because every cell in the body has several hundred mitochondria, and not all of them have the same DNA. Because mitochondrial disorders are complicated and don't always show up in tissue samples or fluid tests, the only way to diagnose one with absolute certainty is with DNA sequencing. And when they sequenced this boy's mitochondrial DNA, they found a peculiar pattern of mutant genes. His mother and sisters had the same pattern, which is exactly what you'd expect, and since none of them have a mitochondrial disorder, the mutations don't seem to explain his condition. But the pattern just stood out so much that the team decided to test the boy's grandparents, too. That was when they made a discovery that was previously thought to be impossible. Only some of his mother's mutation pattern matched her mother's. The rest clearly matched up to the boy's grandfather. Even stranger, when they tested the grandfather's female relatives, they discovered that his pattern of mitochondrial mutations could also be traced to both of his parents. To confirm their findings, the researchers recruited 2 other unrelated families with suspected mitochondrial disorders and had their mitochondrial DNA sequenced. And astonishingly, they found similar patterns. Some family members had inherited mitochondrial variants from just their mothers, and some had inherited them from both parents. This isn't the first study to suggest biparental inheritance of mitochondria. Back in 2002, Danish researchers published a report of a man with a mitochondrial disorder he appeared to have inherited from his father. The results were independently verified by Harvard researchers who also uncovered potential evidence that mitochondrial DNA could recombine or mix just like regular DNA. But in the past decade and a half, no other cases have been reported despite quite a bit of effort to find them. So the whole idea of biparental mitochondrial inheritance, and especially questions of recombination, has remained a contentious topic in genetics circles. This time, though, the researchers made absolutely certain their results were correct. They looked at dozens of people in 3 multi-generation families, used incredibly sensitive testing methods, and had new DNA samples resequenced at 2 other labs just to be sure. And they wouldn't have found any of this if they'd stopped looking once they sequenced the boy's mom and sisters, which is what many doctors would have done since the mutations were inherited as expected and don't appear to be the cause of his ailment. If the idea that people can sometimes inherit mitochondria from both parents doesn't seem like a big deal, consider that mitochondrial DNA is one of the best ways we have to trace the history of our species over centuries. Since it doesn't change much from generation to generation, the small changes that do show up in isolated groups, like populations of people living on different continents, can be used to track where people came from and how they moved around. And the changes are thought to happen at a somewhat reliable rate, allowing us to estimate how long ago groups of people split from others. But all that math assumes that mitochondrial DNA comes only from the egg, which it seems isn't always the case. In fact, based on the findings, the authors of the paper suspect babies might get some mitochondria from sperm as often as 1 in every 5,000 births. If that's true, or if it turns out that mitochondrial DNA can recombine as those Harvard researchers suggested, then all bets are off. The study authors, for their part, don't think their findings completely change things. There isn't enough evidence yet to overturn decades of research into human origins. But it's still early in the discovery process, and it could be years before we really understand how all this messes with ancestry analysis or our understanding of human history.
Maternal DNA inheritance and the female X chromosome. X chromosome inheritance. Women have 2 X chromosomes, one that they received unchanged from their father and one they receive from their mother. The X chromosome a daughter or a son inherits from their mother can occur in one of 3 ways. They can inherit the full X chromosome that their mother received from her father. They can inherit the full X chromosome that their mother received from her mother, or they can receive a combination of their mother's 2 X chromosomes. Leanne Cooper, Genealogy. X chromosome and recombination, an example. The X chromosome is passed down differently than the other 22 chromosomes. Since men only have 1 X chromosome, which they get from their mothers, when a man passes his X onto his daughters, he passes an intact X. As women have 2 X chromosomes, 1 from each parent, when she passes her X onto her children, she could either pass along her parental X, her maternal X, or a mixture, recombination, like with any other chromosome. According to a study done by Blaine T. Bettinger, the genetic genealogist, in 14% of cases, the X chromosome is passed down intact, with no recombination. Most X chromosomes undergo 1 or 2 recombinations. Patrilineal descent and the male Y chromosome. The male Y chromosome is passed down from father to son with slight variations to distinguish male lines one from another. 23andMe. Your haplogroup can tell you about your paternal line. Each generation, fathers pass down copies of their Y chromosomes to their sons, whereas most of the genome exists in 2 copies that exchange pieces between generations in a process called recombination. The Y chromosome is transmitted unshuffled. Because of this unusual pattern of inheritance, the Y contains rich information about parental lineages. A small number of DNA changes called mutations generally occur from one generation to the next. Because the Y chromosome does not recombine between generations, these mutations accumulate in patterns that uniquely mark individual lineages. And scientists can compare the resulting sequence differences by constructing a tree. This tree shows you how parental lineages relate to one another, including the observations that all human parental lineages share a most recent common ancestor, approximately 275,000 years ago. The term haplogroup refers to a family of lineages that share a common ancestor and therefore a particular set of mutations. Each parental haplogroup is named with a letter indicating the major cluster of branches to which it belongs, followed by the name of a mutation that is shared by a subset or the major cluster. We identify your haplogroups by determining which branches of the Y chromosome tree correspond to your DNA because more closely related lineages tend to share geographic roots. Your haplogroup can provide insight into the origins of some of your ancient ancestors. Difference between mutation and recombination. DNA serves as the genetic material of most organisms, storing information for the growth, development, and reproduction. The complete set of DNA of an organism is referred to as the genome. The genomes of organisms are dynamic entities that change over time. Mutation and recombination are 2 types of changes that can occur in genomes. A mutation refers to a change in the nucleotide sequence of a short region of DNA. On the other hand, recombination reconstructs a part of the genome. The main difference between mutation and recombination is that mutation brings a small-scale rearrangement in the genome, whereas recombination brings a large-scale rearrangement in the genome. The pseudo-autosomal region. Your Y DNA isn't identical to your father's, but it's close.
It turns out that both the X and the Y chromosomes have these tiny regions on either end called pseudo-autosomal regions. And these regions actually have the capability of recombining. In other words, in men, when they're passing on their genes, the Y and the X chromosome line up together, and sometimes those pseudo-autosomal regions will swap places. They'll recombine. So when we think about this, Males pass on their Y chromosome to their sons, and they pass on their X chromosome to their daughters. But that X chromosome and that Y chromosome is not always going to be an exact copy because of these pseudo-autosomal regions. It's going to be 95% to 99% the same, except sometimes it's going to be different. So for instance, there's 4 different ways that you could have your X or your Y that's passed on from your father. You could have the pseudo-autosomal regions both be from the Y chromosome that your father had. You could have one from the Y and one from the X chromosome, depending on which side, or you could have both of them be from the X chromosome. So that means 25% of the time, if you are male, then your Y chromosome is exactly identical to your father's. But the other 75% of the time, if you look at those pseudo-autosomal regions, you will have gotten one of those pseudo-autosomal regions from the X chromosome and possibly both of them from the X chromosome that your father had. And likewise, the flip case for your daughters. If they look at their X chromosome that they got from their father, it will only be exactly identical 25% of the time. The other 75% of the time, there will be discrepancies with those pseudo-autosomal regions.
Your mama black, you black? That may be so, but you're still of the line of Yephethic Negroes, the return of Cheddar Man. The following is a short clip from Ivy Anita's channel here on YouTube. This clip is from the video titled Culture Vultures. Our culture is in a costume. Here, Ivy Anita, an Isan woman, explains how parental lineage and tribal membership works in Nigeria.
Before going on is what I have to say. I do want to say that I am not Igbo, not from my mother's side, not from my father's side, okay? I am an Isan girl, and my mom is Urobo, so I am an Isan/Urobo girl. They are not one of the popular tribes, so you probably have never heard of it. I know you guys know of the Igbos, the Yorubas, the Hausas. You guys have heard of all of that, but they are like many others, okay? And yeah. Your girl here is an Isan girl /Urobo. I always have to add it. I claim the two. Just so you guys understand, when I say I claim the two, I'm just supposed to say I'm an Isan girl, okay? Because in Nigeria, you are from your dad's tribe. Whatever tribe your dad is from, that's where you are from. So when they ask you, oh, what tribe are you? I'm just supposed to say I'm Isan. But I say I'm Isan and Urobo. I'm the two. I just cannot not claim my mom's tribe, okay? Because I'm the two, I beg.
Hi, I'm Rick Kittles, co-founder and scientific director of African Ancestry. You know, in my travels around the country, I meet a lot of people, and many of them have the same questions. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity now to answer questions that you may have. Many people wonder, when their results come back and one of these lineages is European, does it mean that they're 100% European? The answer is no. Remember, African Americans are very mixed in terms of ethnicity and ancestry because of the experience of the transatlantic slave trade. And so immediately upon arrival here in North America, there was a lot of mixing going on. And so we see remnants of that in the DNA of African Americans. A lot of men, when they test their Y chromosomes, get a little nervous because, in fact, 30% of the Y chromosomes that we test of African American men are of European ancestry. And so many of them get upset or they are concerned when the match comes back European. You know, I've heard many men say to me, well, I'm very dark-skinned, or I'm African, you can just look and see, but you told me that I'm European. What we told you was that your Y chromosome goes back to Europe, meaning that there was a European male in your family lineage, and that was part of what we see on your Y chromosome test. It doesn't mean that you're European. It just means that that lineage went back to Europe. And if we were to test 12, 15, 16 lineages, they'll go in many different places because we're a very mixed population. When I perform ancestry testing on myself, what I found was 90% West African ancestry and 9 to 10% European ancestry. So that reflects that 10% of my genome that's of European ancestry. And in fact, a big chunk of that 10% is the Y-chromosome because I'm one of those 30% of black men who have a European Y-chromosome. So having a match that goes back to Europe doesn't mean that you have no African ancestry.
We're going to listen to an interview Terry recorded with historian Henry Louis Gates. The new season of his TV series, Finding Your Roots, is now showing on PBS. In the show, notable guests discover their family roots based on genealogical research and DNA results. This kind of research has been especially important for African Americans whose ancestors had their names and families taken away when they were enslaved. One episode this season explores Gates' own DNA and family history. Professor Gates is the director of the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research at Harvard and has produced numerous books and documentaries about African American history. Terry spoke to Henry Louis Gates in front of an audience last May when he was in Philadelphia to receive WHYY's annual Lifelong Learning Award.
Thank you.
Because you talked to everybody about their genealogy, I wanted to talk with you about yours and what you've learned about yourself and the larger meaning of what you've learned about yourself. And I want to start with the person who got you started in genealogy. It was really like the photograph of her, of your great-great-aunt, Jane Gates. And you
Great-great-grandma.
Great-great-grandma,
yes,
yeah, Thank you. So I want to read something that you wrote about her, and you got this from the 1870 census.
Mm-hmm.
That Jane Gates, age 51, female, mulatto, laundress, and nurse, owns real estate valued at $1,400, born in Maryland, cannot read or write. Now, she was born in 1819, died in 1888. You were 9 years old when you found her picture.
Right.
And you got this information from the 1870 census. So reading this, that she's a mulatto, she'd been a slave, the first question that comes to my mind, and I don't know if it was the first question that came to yours, was she raped by the man who owned her?
I can't believe you asked this question because...
Is that too personal? It's a horrible way to start in a way.
Well, the average African-American...
Yeah.
The average African-American is 24% European. Now, think about that. And most DNA companies in the United States will tell you that they have never tested an African-American who was 100% from sub-Saharan Africa. This is called an admixture test. It measures your ancestry back 500 years, approximately. So what that means is that it's the percent of, if you had a perfect family tree, what percent would be from sub-Saharan Africa, what percent would be from Europe, what percent would be Native American. African-American, I love to joke about this, African-Americans all think that they're descended from a Native American, and the average African-American has less than 1% Native American ancestry, but they have 24% European ancestry. So where does that come from? It comes from slavery. Was this an equal sexual relationship? Of course not. So obviously, rape or at best cajoled sexuality was the cause. But there are exceptions. When I did Morgan Freeman's family tree, it was obvious through his DNA that he was descended from a white man who was an overseer on a plantation in Mississippi. And we knew the name of his great-great-grandmother and the name of this white man. So overseer, slave, plantation, rape, right? Except in the next scene, I showed him their headstones. They were buried next to each other. As soon as the Civil War ended, they became common law husband and wife, which was illegal in Mississippi. They lived together, they had kids, and they're buried next to each other. I started the series, it wasn't called Finding Your Roots. You remember it was called African American Lives. I only did black people.
Yeah.
I started with Oprah and Quincy Jones and Bishop T.D. Jakes and Chris Tucker. And the DNA test we were doing at that time, when they analyzed my Y DNA, it went to Ireland. And when they analyzed my mitochondrial DNA, it went to England. I am descended from, on my father's side, from a white man who impregnated a black woman, and on my mother's side, from a white woman who was impregnated by a black man. So if you were a Martian and came down and looked at my DNA results, you'd think I was a white boy, you know? And then when they did my admixture, I'm 50% sub-Saharan African and 50% European, and virtually no Native American ancestry, which really pisses my family off.
Considering that the average African American with 2 legally black parents is autosomally 24% European, and that each person inherits 50% of their DNA from each parent, with the percentage of DNA contribution diminishing for every generation that you go back, if an average African American had no legally white family members in the past 5 generations, and all of his or her white ancestors were in the 6th generation going back, that person would have at least around 15 white male ancestors in order to have 24% European ancestry.
Man, I'm so sick and tired of hearing this, man. Having to address this issue.
Shut up!
Oh!
Fuck out the way!
Man, what the fuck? What's up, everybody? Hey, man, we get comments on this all the time, and we get a lot of emails. Yeah. People, they would like for us to stop claiming that we're black.
Yeah, it's coming
And
from,
you know, it's not coming from white people.
yeah, it's coming from a bunch of niggas, man. That shit hurt my feelings, man.
Yeah, my own people,
My
man.
own people, man, trying to outcast my ass.
Both my parents, everybody wants us to claim we're biracial. But see, the thing is, both my parents are black.
Yeah.
My great-grandparents on both sides of my family, they're black.
Yeah, black niggas as far as the eye can see, man, on both sides, man.
Yeah, man.
But there's some light-skinned niggas, man. A bunch of light-skinned, man.
But let me give you a quick history lesson. Now, see, there's actually a book written on our family.
Yeah, man, it's called The Harrisons, man. The American Family in Black and White.
Yeah, and it just goes over the Harrison plantation. That was a slave plantation.
Yeah.
And right where we grew up is where those plantations was. But anyway, long story short, I'm going to give you a quick history lesson. Like roots on this bitch.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But this would have happened.
Yeah, tell them when we went down.
Back in the 1800s, man. Back on this Harrison plantation.
Yeah.
There's this white dude named John C. Cheatham.
Yeah.
I think he was from Ireland.
Yeah, I think he was, man.
You know what I'm saying? White dude. He was an overseer on one of the Harrison plantations.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? See, an overseer is the person that's out there overseeing all the slaves, man, making sure they out there ain't bullshit.
Yeah, picking that cotton and shit, man.
And make sure they ain't running off and all that shit.
Yeah, it was fucked up, man, but that's how it was back in those days, man. Either you was a slave or you was one of them overseers, man.
Right? So this overseer, he got his eye on one of them black slaves out there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure John C. Cheatham popped up in his head, like, man, I sure would like to bury my mushroom tip deep inside that black ass and bust my nuts.
Yeah, he did, man. He busted all kinds of nuts. Had 11 kids with that woman. That woman's name was Nancy Hodge, man. Yeah, yeah. You know what?
Pussy, shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Busted all kinds of
Yeah,
nuts.
John said, fuck all the rest of them niggas. You sleep in the house with me tonight.
Yeah, you special.
Yeah, you fuck them rest of them niggas. You living in here with me.
But anyway, they had like a bunch of kids. Was
11 kids.
Right? And back during this time, man, that was outlawed. You couldn't do that. So they couldn't marry anything.
They actually would live in separate houses, but that's where my great-grandma came from, man. It was one of their kids.
Great, something like that. Not
Great-great-grandma, man.
Plus, this was outlawed. If they knew this shit was going on, they could have hung John's ass, hung them fucking kids and Nancy.
Yeah, they hung all their ass.
You know what I'm saying? But that's the first white person you come across in my family all the way back in the 1800s, man.
Yeah, see, I told you, man. I'm one of y'all, man. I'm black, man.
Just like you.
Yeah, you black motherfucker. Hey, breaking news. Yeah. We just got our DNA results in. Yeah. We sent in a sample of some nice wet spit to this place. They took that nice wet spit and they tested our DNA to figure out, to let us know, how much a percentage of each and every ancestor I have inside my body.
Yeah.
This is for you hating ass black people out there. Yeah. And the only reason why we did this is because after we did this prior video, Harsh Twins, You're Not Black, niggas was still talking shit.
So to prove these niggas wrong, we went and got a DNA test to show you that a majority of our DNA is African. Yeah. I got the results right here on my phone. Just got the damn email. Yeah. From the lab. Pull this up, man. Hold up, where it go? Pull it up, man. Break it to him, man. Break it down, man. Yeah, man. Let all these hating ass brothers know. 58% of the Hogs twins DNA. That means majority.
Yeah, that's majority.
Because it's 100%. Anything over 50. Yeah, anything over 50.1% is majority.
Yeah. This is 58.
We talking 58 in here.
We talking 58. We ain't talking 50 and a half, 50 and 1/10. We talking 58%.
We talking 58.
That's the majority.
That's what we talking.
That's what we talking.
58% of our DNA is from Africa.
Told you.
The motherland.
I told you, black motherfuckers. Hitting the tape.
It gives you a breakdown. 24% from the Ivory Coast, Ghana. 12% from Nigeria. 11% from Africa Southeastern, Bantu. Then another 7% from Togo. Then 2% from the Cameroon and Congo. It's a whole lot of,
a bunch of crazy brothers down there.
Yeah, right? Now the other 42%, it's 1% from Native American.
That's a goddamn lie.
Yeah,
got more damn Indian.
Well, Grandpa wasn't 100% Indian. He was like, he had some Indian in him.
Yeah.
Right? Because Grandpa was dark skinned, right?
Yeah.
It made you black people proud, but he was dark, but his hair was looked like a damn Asian person's hair.
Yeah, it looked like he put a perm in his shit.
Yeah.
He always wore it slick to the back, man.
Yeah.
He was
like Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
He had some Frank
He was
Sinatra.
a black Frank Sinatra, man. It was slick back with grease.
Yeah. Okay. Now the other 41% says Europe, and it gives a breakdown
of what country.
35% from Great Britain. Yeah. No wonder, man, because we go to London, man, we got a lot of love out there. I guess they see
that in their blood.
They see a bit of them in us, man.
That's what it is.
That's what it is, man.
We got a connection with them, man.
Got a connection.
That's love right there, man.
That's love. That's
that love that goes blood deep.
Yeah. Okay, 35% Great Britain. Then it says 2% Scandinavia, 2% Iberian Peninsula. It's cold as fuck over there.
Yeah, it's goddamn Eskimos, ain't it?
Yeah, Europe West 1%, then Ireland less than 1%.
Yeah.
Right? So, there you have it.
Yeah. 58% African, 2%?
And if some of y'all that say we ain't black enough, go get your DNA tested. I guarantee you, you ain't 100%. I don't care how dark you is. You ain't gonna be 100%.
Because you look at the black people around here and compare yourself to the black people in Africa, you look nothing like those brothers. Nothing.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody here in the United States 100% black. Ain't nowhere in hell.
I think there's a couple of them.
Yeah, they just got here from the boat from Africa.
Didn't I tell them?
You told them.
We both told them.
You told all them black motherfuckers.
See?
Yeah.
I'm black just like you.
Just light skinned.
You black motherfuckers.
Tell the people who you are and who you're related to.
Okay. Well, my name is Nesta Rose, and I'm the first cousin of Candace Owens.
First cousin of Candace Owens, political commentator. Now look, people. Hey, even when I was contacted, I was like, "You're not no cousin of Candace Owens," and then you showed me the proof.
Yeah, first cousins. Yep. Our moms are sisters.
Yeah, y'all moms are sisters, and you said that actually she has you said her dad's last name and not y'all last name. How does that work?
Yeah. Candace got her dad last name. We all was born with the same last name, but kind of when we went, like, I think heading towards like teenage years, she got her last name switched to her pop's last name. So that's how that went. That's how she became Owens. So.
How she became an Owens. And you know what's funny? When you search Candace Owens, like on Google or anything, really nothing about her family comes up. Like, we know she's married. She has 2 kids now, but like her cousins, aunties, uncles, grandmama, grandpa, we have no idea.
It's kind of simple. Where we come from, we don't really like the attention. We don't really like the fame. And I think for most of them, 90% of our family, they don't really agree with what she got going on. So they just rather stay away from it. And then, you know, like I said, again, we just really don't like the spotlight, even though we are known, like very, very well known in our community and things like that. You know, it's a different level when it's the internet. You know what I mean? A lot of people, we don't play those games really too much. So we'd rather stay away from it.
I understand that because the internet is very disrespectful, and so you know, you mess around here and comment, and you be like, you know what, I'm finna pull up because you got me messed up.
Nah, you know, it happens.
It does. A lot of people want to know, man, does Candace Owens hate black people? Let me just be frank.
No, Candace Owens don't hate black people. Well, what I would say with Candace is very much aware and know that she's black. You know, of course, her whole family's black. You know what I mean? So she have been around black people. But as far as on her daily base, like growing up on a daily basis in her life, she was around more white people. You know what I mean? She grew up in Connecticut. So, you know, all her friends was white. You know, all the guys she ever dated. I don't think I ever known Candace to ever date a black dude. Like her sisters, like her sisters would date black dudes, you know, things like that. But Candace, I never seen her with a black dude. And people don't know either. Like, I want to get the record straight, you know, kind of with that too. You know, our grandfather is, if you look at him, he looked like a white man. With that being said, we have pure white, like close cousins. So, you know, we're probably more white than anything, to be honest with you. So I just really think she's probably she always did identify, you know, in that aspect. So, you know, even since we were kids, I remember having conversations, you know, things like that. Cause I always thought it was kind of weird, you know, she would be a little white girl, you know what I mean? Things like that too.
Okay.
But she always been like that. Is she not fronting? She not putting on. She literally always been like that. So.
African Americans. According to the founder of African Ancestry, most black men in America, aka Israelites, have a percentage of white DNA because of the many rapes during slavery. She stated that when they test black males to identify the tribes that they are in, they do so through the maternal line of the mother.
Just so you guys understand, when I say I claimed it too, I'm just supposed to say I'm an Eastern girl, okay? Because in Nigeria, you are from your dad's tribe. Whatever tribe your dad is from, that's where you are from. So when they ask you, oh, what tribe are you? I'm just supposed to say I'm Eastern.
Hi, I'm Rick Kittles, co-founder and scientific director of African Ancestry. You know, in my travels around the country, I meet a lot of people, and many of them have the same questions. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity now to answer questions that you may have. Many people wonder, when their results come back and one of these lineages is European, does it mean that they're 100% European? The answer is no. Remember, African Americans are very mixed in terms of ethnicity and ancestry because of the experience of the transatlantic slave trade. And so immediately upon arrival here in North America, there was a lot of mixing going on. And so we see remnants of that in the DNA of African Americans. A lot of men, when they test their y-chromosomes, get a little nervous because, in fact, 30% of the y-chromosomes that we test of African American men are of European ancestry. A lot of men, when they test their y-chromosomes, get a little nervous because, in fact, 30% of the y-chromosomes that we test of African American men are of European ancestry. A lot of men, when they test their y-chromosomes, get a little nervous because, in fact, 30% of the y-chromosomes that we test of African American men are of European ancestry. And so many of them get upset or they are concerned when the match comes back European. You know, I've heard many men say to me, well, I'm very dark-skinned or I'm African. You can just look and see, but you told me that I'm European. What we told you was that your Y chromosome goes back to Europe, meaning that there was a European male in your family lineage, and that was part of what we see on your Y chromosome test. And I perform ancestry testing on myself. What I found was 90% West African ancestry and 9 to 10% European ancestry. So that reflects that 10% of my genome that's of European ancestry. And in fact, a big chunk of that 10% is the Y chromosome, because I'm one of those 30% of black men who have a European Y chromosome. So having a match that goes back to Europe doesn't mean that you have no African ancestry.
Some want to say that our haplogroup G makes us white men. Well, those who say that, I would like to see their haplogroup. Oh yes, please show us your haplogroup. Put it out there, please. Log into Ancestry or whatever DNA company you use and show us your DNA. We showed ours already. Okay, and most of it was Cameroon, Ghana, a large percentage of Nigeria, Benin, Togo. That's our autosomal. If you live in America, I am sure you have white ancestry. However, as stated in the introduction, we believe that not only is there problems in using haplogroups to identify familial relationships, but we believe that there is direct fraud going on as well. Where did haplogroup G originate?